Welcome back. Now, with the state capture inquiry currently underway and the underhanded dealings of companies like Steinhoff and even audit firm KPMG, it begs the question, are businesses even ethical anymore? And my next guest says that what we see happening is the story of a society that has allowed itself to be subsumed by greed. And he joins me now, Jon Foster-Pedley, who is the Dean and Director of the Henley Business School in Johannesburg. Thank you so much for coming through this morning.
It's a pleasure, Sakina. Nice to be here.
So let's start at the beginning. Why do you think, as a society, we have allowed ourselves to be overcome by greed to our own detriment in the end?
Well, the first thing I want to say that not everyone is subsumed by greed. I mean, historically, go back to dawn of time, greed has been one of the great sins, and we're all tempted by it. But I think what's happened in the past years is that the checks and balances have been systematically removed, and we're in danger of making heroes of the wrong sort of people. So when you ask yourself, who are the new African heroes, the new generation, they are certainly not the tenderpreneurs, they're certainly not the state capturers. They're a different type of people. They're a sort of activist person who is stepping up to try and fight against the greed. And what's happened in past years, and I hope is changing now, is that greed mounted more and more, and the possibility of seeing it was stripped away from us, and we started choosing the wrong role models.
But how much of, a culpability should we assume as society for that? Because surely you can't be fooling all the people.
No, you can't. I mean, I think what's happened is that we haven't been trained, or we're not forcing ourselves to see long-term consequence. Now, if I'm a senior executive in a company and I have to sign an audit report, and I need that audit report and I need the fees to keep my people employed, to meet my quarterly targets, to keep the reputation of the company up with the clients, then it's very hard for me sometimes to say no to the client. I might have a small voice in the back of my mind or in my heart somewhere saying this is wrong, but it's easy to rationalize it away. What we need to do now is make it very clear that the effects of corruption are on the poorest of society. Corruption is colorblind. It's not a black thing, it's not a white thing, it's not a green thing. It's all about the choices people make. And unless we can understand that we are citizens foremost and not business people or politicians, we're going to make those mistakes. And I think being an active citizen, as Pravin Gordon often mentions, is a thing that keeps us alive and understands that we're making decisions for all of our children. And the poorest people are not getting the opportunity they need to lift themselves out. In a country with one of the highest Gini coefficients in the world, if we don't watch out, we're perpetuating a bad future for all our children, and we have to change that.
And we hear a lot about, corruption and malfeasance in the public sector, but the private sector are not immune. And for the most part, we tend to scratch the surface as far as private sector corruption goes. But we've seen now with state capture that there is this intricate connection between the two, and it is the one that allows the other to basically flourish. But again, even in that instance, isn't it happening with the tacit approval of South African society?
I think we've been disempowered. We've allowed ourselves to be frightened. And I think we can't afford to let that happen. We at Henley have a drive called corporate activism, and it's on all our signs you see as you drive down. # corporate activism, # no more bribes. And the reason we do that is, as business leaders, we have to be extremely conscious of the consequences of our actions. The watchdogs who were professional have now become businesses who are now commercial. And so what's happening with people like KPMG, where you get 8 people fired, not only do they lose their careers, but their personal reputations are spread on the internet for their children and grandchildren to see in all time. Their company crashes, 8 people get fired, and you're starting to see that transparency is everywhere now. If you're going to make a decision that is going to, in some form or another, collude with corruption, you are culpable, and you need to understand that. But the first point is not to terrorize people with a sense of shame or guilt, but actually to awake people and understand that there are consequences to these beyond the short term, and we are all involved in trying to make a better society. And now is our time to make a difference.
But what are those consequences? Because for the most part, it seems as though people go scot-free. You had another commission looking into Nkandla. Nobody's been held accountable. Now we're sitting with another commission into state capture. What are the chances, given that even for these commissions of inquiry, their recommendations are not binding?
Well, there was a wonderful program on TV in Britain, I remember many, many years ago, called Yes, Prime Minister. And it was the interplay between the Prime Minister and the civil servants. And what the civil servants would say when the Prime Minister wanted action was, we'll set up a commission of inquiry. And the Prime Minister said, no, I want action. And Sir Humphrey would say, well, we'll have a working group, a powerful steering group. No, I want action. So inquiry doesn't change things. While we're doing these commissions, actions are still going on. People are still corrupt, or we're colluding. We have to be very awake in real time. And so we need to support the people like Pravin Gordhan and others who are trying to make a change. And we can support it not just with rhetoric or ideals or principles. We can support it with method. And we at Henley have methods now, which we've drawn from aviation and other places, to teach people how to prevent them colluding in corruption. There's a range of sayings. We have a thing called PACE, which is probe, alert, challenge, and then emergency. We've taken it from the flight deck. Captains of aircraft have been crashing their aircraft, and now captains of industry are crashing their companies. So we have to make people ask, is this the right thing to do? And then we have to get the second tier of managers to challenge their bosses and say, no, I think this is wrong. If we do this, I'm alerting you to a consequence. And then we have to challenge them and say, if you do this, I'm going to blow the whistle. And then if they still don't change, we have to make whistleblowing easier, less stigmatized. And we have to make sure that the emerging managers have the guts and the capability to stand up to the seniors for everybody's sake, so that we start creating healthy businesses that do good, that help society. This is a powerful revolution we're sitting on, right on the cusp of now, and we can all get involved. It's a wonderful time to be corporate in South Africa if you want to do good.
Just a final question. Are there still any ethical business people left in this country?
I think most people are ethical. I think what we've done is we've allowed the watchdogs and our consciousness to decline. Now's the time to keep ourselves all wake up. We're all good people, and these are not done mostly by evil people. It's us, and we can do better. And now's the time for all of us to step up and make a difference.
So there you have it. The answer ultimately lies with us and being active citizens. So thank you so much to Jon Foster-Pedley, the Dean and Director at the Henley Business School here in Johannesburg, and talking to us about business ethics, saying as a society we've become consumed by greed, and I suppose we are feeling the effects of that. But the broader question is, what are we going to do about it? Let's leave it there.